You're listening to The Social Workers on WCDB Albany.
Welcome to The Social Workers. I'm Kathryn Zox, your social worker with the microphone, and you're listening to the Social Workers Radio Talk Show here at the University at Albany, WCDB FM. Noah Bondi on the board. How are you this morning, Noah?
Doing all right.
Good. We have two guests this morning, and one's calling in right now, as a matter of fact. That light is blinking, and she's right on time. The first guest is Natalie Milman. Natalie is a graduate student at the Columbia Graduate School of Social Work here in New York, and she's a trained guided autobiography instructor. We're going to find out what a trained guided autobiography instructor is. She also has her own business. So she's a first-year graduate student, and her business is called Your Story, Your Way. She's doing interesting, exciting things, very different kind of approach to social work. Natalie combines her passion for writing with her social work skills to help others record their personal histories. Her services include guided autobiography and memory writing, tribute and memory writing, and couples history writing. Inspire, transform, and rejuvenate your life with your story, your way. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you on this morning, Natalie.
Hi, good morning. Oh, I'm so excited to be sharing what I'm doing with you.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you because here we're obviously School of Social Work here at UAlbany, and I'm always interested to see what students at other schools are doing, and you are doing something really unique besides obviously studying and getting your MSW degree. So tell us, I don't think many people know, what is a guided autobiography instructor?
All right. So basically, guided autobiography is derived from Robert Butler's life review processes that he designed, over 25 years ago. Dr. Jim Barron, who is the founding dean of the gerontology school at USC, which is my undergraduate school, he is the one who designed the process of guided autobiography. He came up with it as a way of sort of consolidating the life review process that Robert Butler came up with and really wrote a lot about. And what he did was he made it a more viable way of doing it in like nursing homes and retirement centers. And really he brings the elements of life review that really work well, including just the process of reminiscence and the sort of sharing one's life story with another person, and he sort of exponentially makes it larger in the guided autobiography group.
All right, so give us an example, like a specific example. I mean, I think that's an excellent, obviously, a description of how this came about in this way of having somebody write an autobiography. But, you talk about in nursing homes helping people to write their autobiographies. So give us like a case example. You're a social worker.
Yeah. So my group that I've been running for the past several months in September, I do run it out of my home, and it actually does not really, it's not at a nursing home, but it's been very successful in allowing my group members to explore their traumatic experiences and share with others. The range of people that I service it's a free group. And people range from in their later 40s to 80s, and they write 2 pages every week, and they bring it to group and they read it aloud, and then we all share our thoughts and feelings about it, and it's really nice. And people have been participating in this group since September, and have been very successful at working through some of their difficult past histories.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask you about. So in the process, in the course of here, you're helping them to write their autobiographies, guiding them. They're in a group, they share it. How does that help? So it helps them to be able to bring up some of the painful memories that are in their stories, and then they're able to have a cathartic experience, or they get support from other people in the group. How does that work?
That's exactly right. They share their stories, they reframe their experiences, and sort of recreate the myths that they live with. And so there's people who one week they will tell one side of their story, and then, you know, a couple of weeks or a month later, they'll tell the same story, but in a completely different way. And there's one person I'm thinking of in particular. I won't breach any of her details whatsoever, but, you know, initially she began by talking about some of the abuse she endured and in her family life. And very recently she's been writing more about forgiveness. So evolving from documenting the hurt to sort of accepting and integrating the past history. And this is a relatively short intervention. I mean, considering we started the group in September, I mean, it's been ongoing and we've had new members in and out, but those who have stuck with it have seen the largest gains.
Natalie, is this a new way of doing social work? I mean, social workers sit down with clients, either one-to-one or in a group situation, and they end up telling your stories. That's the idea of getting the patient or the client to open up. But this is a little bit different, and this is a different way of approaching it. And
yes, it really is. So I was trained in this by the Buren Center for Guided Autobiography and Life Review. They offer a training course for instructors, and it really serendipitously, we had in my particular training group, almost everybody was either a social worker or had worked in social services and, you know, could be legitimately called a social worker, but not an LCSW or LMSW or whatever.
So obviously people who are in the helping profession that are similar to social workers, I suppose. It could be psychiatrists, counselors, even teachers?
Yes, teachers too, and also personal historians. And so the personal historian lens is one that I apply to my social work practice on a daily basis, and I've presented on that at Columbia, and it's something that it's a relatively new profession, so it's informative stages, but eventually I'd like to see it through to full licensure along the lines of social work, not a separate profession. Well, I guess a separate profession where there's a licensing board and such. I'd like to see that happening.
Or what about being part of the curriculum for social workers? Is that something that's in the future?
I have no idea, but guided autobiography would be an excellent component to integrate into gerontological courses. I think there is probably some syllabi that exists that integrates life review and reminiscence and such into aging course syllabus. But the thing is, I feel like guided autobiography should not be restricted to just older populations. It should be expanded to meet the needs of younger people too. So one of the things that as soon as I got involved in guided autobiography, I thought, well, this is a great way of, bridging the divide between younger people and older people in this society where older people are frequently marginalized and younger people are kind of averse to interacting with older people. So it's sort of if you get kids to help their elders who can't type and who may not even have the capacity to do longhand writing, to help with writing autobiography through the guided autobiography process, I see that this could be a really therapeutic activity that really helps people in many ways.
Yeah, it helps them make that connection, and there's an understanding between younger people and older people, grandparents and grandchildren, or children, or children and their parents. You also, as I understand it, one of your areas of expertise in the guided autobiography is couples history writing. So how does that work? Yeah, what is couples history writing? That's a little bit different than older and younger generation getting together.
Yes, it is very different. So what I hope to achieve with this new service that really I don't see anywhere else is to work with couples who are in the process of getting engaged or who are getting married soon or who are just really considering making those major steps in their lives. It's a kind of date or a situation where we can sit down together and sort of evaluate values and life history in a very thorough kind of way, so that is very focused towards building better relationships where and sort of examining where things intersect and where things could possibly lead for the future. So, does that make sense?
Not only does it make sense, I'm just relating it to an experience I just had. I was at a party, and I was talking to a young couple, and they are getting married, and they both come from very different religious backgrounds. And it was interesting. I started asking them questions because I am a social worker, and they really didn't want to discuss it. They kind of brushed over it, well, we're not that religious. And I happen to know one of them, and she actually came from a fairly religious family. So I'm thinking this is going to be an issue. I've had a lot of experience, and I can see that at some point, because if it's not really discussed, it will be an issue. So that's probably an example of what you're talking about.
Exactly. I know that I was in a relationship where I could have benefited from a service like this because we were talking marriage, and I was really too young.
Yeah, it's a kind of like a premarital counseling situation that people could avail themselves to before they actually make a decision to get married. But that's
though not framed like it. Which makes it more likely in some cases where, couples may not be wanting to actually examine strategies for, not wanting to acknowledge possibilities of failure. It's very strengths-focused, it's very positive, and it's very focused on making things work. So...
it's defined different. Yes, you're saying that the definition is different, and so it's going to attract more people to the process. The other sounds like, as you say, like sort of you're already in counseling, or you're already, looking forward to failure. But this is very different than that, and the way you frame it is different. So there's a lot of possibilities, Natalie, with this guided autobiography. Guided autobiography. That's what, right? GAB.
Yeah, personal historian work is really the umbrella under which guided autobiography fits. There's a lot of personal historians who do genealogy and archival work and photograph work and things like that. I also do photographic work, but not a whole lot these days.
Well, you're really one talented woman, I must say, besides getting your MSW at Columbia. So I'm really impressed, and I also want to know, how did you get into this? I mean, before you got into the MSW program, what were you doing?
I was a sociology major at USC. I was doing the honors sociology thesis program, and I lent back, and I wanted to look at my browser history to see how I actually came across GAB, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how I did. My browser history cuts off at just the time when I first ran into autobiography and the Buren Center, and it's just like, okay, I don't remember how I ran into it, but I signed up for the guided autobiography class. I found it through a different way. I didn't find it through the gerontology school at USC. I was just looking for training, something to do with older adults, to volunteer and work with them, and because the aging population is one that concerns me a lot. I mean, especially with the demographic changes we can anticipate in the upcoming years. So.
Yeah, well, it's happening as we speak. Baby boomers are turning, 65. I don't know how many are turning 65 every day, but I know it's in great numbers. So, you're on the right track with the right demographics, I think. But what do you think, like in your personal background or your story? You obviously have a story, too. Yes, and maybe you want to share that with us, because it would seem to me that probably got you engaged in or interested in the GAB.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I really want to thank my mom, because she really inspired me to take on this path. She's done a whole lot of genealogy work for my family and traced things back to past the 1600s and such. And also she really involved me in the family archival project that we did as a family. Before we did this, I was really interested in my grandfather's history because he served in Korea, and it's very sensitive to the fact that Korea is kind of, in some senses, the forgotten war in terms of, like, benefits received to veterans and such. And I really felt a lot of compassion from a very early age as soon as I learned about what Korea veterans in particular really didn't get from the United States that previous wars did get. And so I was really curious about his experiences in Korea, and my first oral history project that I actually did was recording him doing about his Korea experiences, which was, I didn't do it very well, but it's one of the few recordings that we have of his later life, and he's passed away at this point. So it's very precious to me.
Well, were there any things that you learned that you perhaps wish you hadn't learned? You know, when people say, well, let history just let it lay, let it stay there. I don't want to know about all this stuff. I mean, maybe there's things that come up that people don't want to deal with, maybe, or even you. Were there any kinds of surprises that were unpleasant?
Well, the way I see it is, the more I know about the whole person, the more I can empathize and care about them in a way that is, that treats them as a whole person. So, as far as things that surprise me or whatever, like, yeah, there have been things that have disturbed me a little bit or whatever, but basically I try to self-examine with them and sort of like, okay, so why is this bothering me? Okay, well, I guess it's not that bad. Okay, cool. And I just kind of reconcile that with the larger picture of what I know about the person. But the thing is, you're bringing up a good point. A lot of people resist doing personal history because they really don't have the wherewithal to really sit down and reflect on past experiences. And those are the people that really need the most, because they're by default they're not defaulting into a self-reflective mode of self-analysis, self-awareness, and a greater consciousness.
So some of that stuff is just there. It's sitting there. It's not good stuff. It's stuffed inside emotionally, and it does impact on people's choices, which aren't always good choices. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what's been the response you're at from the School of Social Work, from both professors, administrators, your colleagues, or the other students?
Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, I did write an article, which is probably how you found me, is an article on this USSW website. And then I did a presentation recently for Community Day at USSW. My professors have been not super interested, but also not unsupportive. And
neutral?
They've allowed me to make announcements in class, and basically that's what I can ask of them. Really, the most valuable asset to my practice is the class that I'm taking in motivational interviewing. A lot of people think they really know how to do motivational interviewing after a one-day workshop. I've been in this class with Dr. Alan Zweben for the past the whole semester, and I do not feel entirely confident in motivational interviewing. And I really, 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 really want to advocate for people who even think that they know MI to really practice their skills very regularly, seek supervision in MI, because it's a very valuable asset. And moreover, it's not just restricted to alcohol and substance abuse treatment. It's really highly applicable to all sorts of things. I'm a huge advocate for MI practices. It was really one of the most effective classes I've had at USSW, and I could not speak more highly of it.
Well, the way I did find you was not through the ways that you just described. I actually, we're trying to here on the radio show, our radio show at the School of Social Welfare at UAlbany, trying to engage other students and or professors or whoever's doing something interesting at schools of social work around the country. And you're one of the first. We've had a few people on, and I found you on the Columbia School of Social Work website because I went to the websites of different universities to see, who was doing what, and that's where I found you.
Oh, that's what I imagined, is that because I did post an article on there.
Yeah, that's where I found it. Now, I have another question, because you're into another project as well, I guess, and obviously it's related to what you're doing, called Advocating Creatively, and you can go...
Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up.
Good. Well, tell us about it. What's Advocating Creatively?
Well, basically, it's a way of integrating advocacy work, which is an absolute essential component of social work because it's in the Code of Ethics, and frequently gets kind of put on the back burner because we're dealing, especially when we're doing clinical work, because we're focused on doing clinical work. So Advocating Creatively is a project that I'm doing with at least one other student at USSW named Lauren Newland. shout out to her. And she and I, and hopefully some other people at USSW, are sending out a lot of emails to a lot of really cool people who are doing really cool stuff, such as if you're acquainted with LARPing.
No, I'm not. What is it?
LARPing is a form of game that, well, it depends on what kind, but there's a specific author who does write these live-action role-play games where they're focused on realizing what it's like to have Alzheimer's and dealing with that and working with cancer patients. Like, that's just one example of doing creative advocacy. And I use creative advocacy, the term, not relevant to advocating for creative services in schools. That's awesome, but not what I mean. So it's a way of really getting people's attention and educating people about various causes and various problems and various difficulties people have through creative means, like doing it through art, doing it through busking on the street, holding a sign that says donate to Habitat for Humanity and stating facts about why substandard housing sucks and stuff like that.
So, I mean, I think obviously the advocating for those who need advocating, for the poor, the underprivileged, all those things. Social workers do it, but we've done it in more traditional ways, is what you're saying. So you have like a whole list or series of things that you can do to advocate in a creative way. That's very cool. Now, that LARPing, describe that more in detail. I'm really interested in LARPing.
Yeah, LARPing is a form of game. I am a self-described nerd, and I like to hang out with nerds. So that's my private life. But there are ways that my professional identity and my personal identity do intersect, and games such as Happy Endings, which is the Alzheimer's game, and so I've sought out the author of that particular game and asked him to write an essay, and he's promised to, and, as well as many other people who do other things that are like that, where sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. I'm excited.
Good.
So I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, well, you said LARPing, but there are other things too. Other people doing different kinds of things. I've sent out many emails to many different people, and still compiling emails. And so we're doing a call for submissions for essays. From anybody who's doing something really exciting and doing advocacy in a new way, to bring all these perspectives together and sewing them together in a book and distributing it, and all the profits going to charity, which is in itself a kind of creative advocacy. Absolutely.
I mean, it's one that is sort of formalized already, but, it bears repeating.
Well, Natalie, how do you do all this? I mean, you have a whole series of major projects that you're doing all the time, plus getting your MSW. My question is, you must be a very well organized person. Where do you get I don't know if it takes any financial wherewithal to be able to do this, or it's simply the way you organize things, or how does, give us a brief synopsis of how you kind of can do all of this. Most students I know can just barely do their practice and then also do their coursework. So you are, a special kind of student, obviously.
I just get by the seat of my pants, and I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't have the unending support of my boyfriend, who I love very much, and all of my friends in my life and such. And I mean, I just am a high-powered person. I've always been a super high-powered person, and I don't know where that will get me, but really it's just the people in my life, being inspired by my mom especially, who is exactly just the same sort of personality. She works very hard, is very diligent, she emphasizes following through with things, and really that's my source of inspiration, is her and the other people around me who have really supported me, and in emotional ways as well as financial ways. So, well,
you're lucky to have a mother like that, who is not only your mother and who loves you and supports you, but it sounds like she's also a mentor. I mean, from the kinds of things that she's doing as well. So you are doing all of this. When you graduate, what do you plan to do? Just continue with this kind of work?
Well, I'm thinking either an advocacy track that's purely advocacy, like Michael Friedman came to our class the other day and talked about how he pursues his career as an advocate. Like, that is very appealing to me because I want to see large-scale institutional change, but I'm also not really interested in policy per se. So, I mean, that would be really cool. And or doing clinical work and or continuing with personal history work, which I feel like will be a lifelong commitment to advancing this profession, which is essentially newborn. So I'm really excited.
And I guess one of the other areas, well, you mentioned it, I think, earlier, the homeless, the disabled, older adults, those are some of the populations that you're, at least now, very particularly interested in. And so obviously you can apply all this work advocating creatively to those particular groups.
Yes, that is a wonderful way of summing it up.
So I want to, anyone who's listening wants to go to a website. If they're interested in the work that you're doing, getting more information, they can go up to advocatingcreatively.com. But don't you also, you have a website for Your Story, Your Way?
Yes, exactly. And it's yourstoryyourway.com.
yourstoryyourway.com. Well, I'm going to follow you, Natalie. And
thank you.
I will be following you on the web. I'm really interested in what you're doing, and it's really exciting. And Columbia Graduate School of Social Work is lucky to have you, Natalie. Yes, Natalie Milman. I'm going to mention again that she is a graduate student at Columbia, and is a guided autobiography instructor. Thanks so much for being on the show this morning.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been so fun.
This has been great. Lots of